Hello and welcome to the first e-lesson for ESIT 6160 and 8160. This is Designing Learning Systems with Simulations and Game Technology. So what we're going to be looking at here in this first e-lesson is just a quick overview of what you're going to be talking about in this first lesson. Then we're going to talk about the actual final project, mainly in detail for you, so you get an idea of what's going to be happening there already and you can be starting with that. Before we do any of that, we're actually going to take a quick peek at what our modules look like for each week. For each weekly module, it will appear on your Moodle course shell when you come to it. We will have our basically 6 squares here. Not all 6 squares will be used every week, but this is kind of how I've laid out the course to make it the easiest to access. The first square has our objectives for the week. What are we trying to accomplish? The second one will be the readings and the resources. This will be a lot of times where the actual content can be for the weekly lesson. In this case, for week 1, you need to read each of these readings and look at the 3 videos that are up there also. Then there's going to be an e-lesson, which is what you're actually watching right now. These e-lessons are basically sometimes can be videos, they sometimes can be interactive pieces, but they are where content is either presented by me or discovered by you in some type of format. That's kind of the way it works for these. I'll also try to, anytime possible, provide a PDF version of this so that you can actually review it or make notes as you go through, either way. In this particular one, we have the e-lesson, the PDF of the e-lesson, and then we're actually going to have final project instructions also, which will make more sense in just a few minutes after we go through the entire thing. The fourth block down on the lower left down there is the discussion. You'll notice it says go to the forums and complete discussion 2 down there. I'll just highlight that to show you what that looks like. Basically what we're doing there is and whenever possible, I put the links directly into this box, but for some reason that one wouldn't work this week. So just go out and click on the big forums button and then click on discussion 2 and see what the assignment is there for that. Our assignment for this week is just the next box to the right in the middle there, is basically to talk about what is a game and what is a simulation. And I'll let you read through the instructions there and go through it. That's where our assignments will be whenever they are applicable for each week. And lastly, each week I ask you to do a reflection. This allows you to think about what you learned in this module, what worked for you, what didn't work, what things you'd like to see differently. So it's not only a piece for you to reflect on and internalize and hopefully kind of internalize some of your learning, it's also for me to be able to know what things are working and what things are not that I can change. It's kind of like a little formative evaluation, if you will, for me, that'll know how things are going. So that's a little bit just quickly about the weekly modules and what you're going to be seeing there as you go through. So let's start by talking about our first topic for this current weekly module is games and simulations. We're going to be talking about definitions. With anything that you do, anything that you start to learn, any type of topic or subject area, you're going to have to learn the definitions before you can actually talk about the thing that you're trying to learn about. This works in any type of field. The best example I can think of are medical doctors who will go through normally 3 to 4 years of school, medical school, where they basically learn definitions, terms, they learn all about different parts of the body and all the different muscle names. They learn all of that, and then they spend the next 3 to 7 years, depending on what their field is, in a residency where they're working with other doctors, where they're actually practicing. That's how they do that. So those are some examples of why we need to do this. The basic gist of it is you're going to go through, you're going to create a knowledge base so that you can then build off of that. And we're going to start off with being able to define games and simulations and what's the difference. We'll then come to gamification and talk about what that is and how that fits into this whole thing. So those are kind of where we're going to start this week. You've got some good articles for you to read. Some of them are a little older, but they still lay down the good foundation of what we're talking about. And then also some good videos to get you thinking about ways games are being used and some good things in there too. I wanted to take this time to introduce to you the final project. There is a document handout on this same little block in your weekly lesson for this week, but I wanted to walk through it kind of quickly just to give you an overview. This is not due until the end of the semester, but it's important that we talk about it now because you need to see the big picture in mind and where we're going. We're going to be talking about games. We're going to learn about different ways to create games, different genres of games, all that kind of stuff. And we're all tying that into how does that work in an instructional design system? Where do games fit best? Where should they be used most effectively, or how can they be used most effectively, I should say. And then we're going to ask you to put that all together, and we're going to ask you to actually design something that uses a game that is part of an instructional system. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to basically give you all the tools, all the research, all the theory behind why you should do this or why you shouldn't do this. And I will say that there are plenty of examples of why you shouldn't use a game too in an instructional design system. But what we're going to do is look at a way for you to put it all together and demonstrate what you've learned. I'm a huge fan of working on creating a portfolio as you go through these things. So if you're working on a portfolio right now for your particular area, whatever that might be, you need to be saving these projects, putting them in that portfolio so that you have these wonderful things that you can show that you've created along the way throughout your coursework, and it shows in a future employer what you're possible, what you can do. So as we look at this final project, the overview is you're going to create an educational games-based product that can be used by a teacher or a trainer or yourself in a training or a classroom. Products should be based on one of the topics that we studied during the course. Some of this will make obviously more sense once you've actually seen all the topics that we've gone through and gone all through all the different games and genres and all that stuff. But again, for right now, let's keep the big picture in mind. Here's what you got to do. And here's why we're starting to talk about this right now. First off, you have to determine a project that could be incorporated by you, the teacher or the trainer, in a future training or classroom. You've got to come up with an idea. You've got to figure out what am I going to do, and you've got to find a partner to do it with. Now, some of you may already be teaching or training in your normal jobs, and you are this just part of your regular daily thing that this is what you do. Then you already have a setup there that would be possible to work. Also, if you don't, what I'm asking you to do is find a teacher or a trainer that you could partner with to do this project. You're going to basically look to find this person who you could create a games-based project with. They're teaching, let's say, a new computer system that's been installed into their workplace, and they need your help to create something that would help them to teach on that or train on that. You might find a public school teacher or a college professor who'd be willing to let you create something to be used in one of their courses. This is what you're doing right now. You're trying to come up with these ideas. And I'm going to give you some examples that I think will help you kind of get going. Once you've come up with that idea, and I'm going to be putting these out along the way as we go through each week, you're going to be given these notices about what you have to do with the final project to keep you on track. You're going to submit that to me, approximately in paragraph in length, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and what technologies you'll be using. I will approve that. I will then give you a specific list of what I call deliverables. And those deliverables are the things you will need to create for me in this project. And they're unique to every person because each person is going to create a different project for a different training or a different teaching environment. So they're all going to be different. That's why we individualize them to each of you. In addition, I think we have some doctoral students in this course, and so they're going to have a different set that goes along with their deliverables. So you and me will agree on these after I send them back to you. Once we've agreed on them, then you may start development of the project. You'll work with it, you'll deliver the project to the teacher or the trainer, and you'll help them implement depending on what the project is. That at that point it becomes very individualized. After the completion of it, you'll send me all the files through our final project upload page. So get the picture of what you're doing here. You're working basically with a client. You're going to find a client, you're going to design an educational based games product with that client, and you're going to implement it. You're going to then most likely evaluate it and then reflect on how things went. You'll upload all that documentation to me at the end of our course. So just to, again, I'll give you a little bit of things to think about. I want you to think about the things that we're going to do this semester. We're going to create a whole list of references. And these are references of different types of games, different ways to create games, different genres, and this will be like your fallback book, if you will, this reference book that we're going to create together. It'll have all these wonderful tools in it, and that's what you're going to fall back on to find something in there that could be used to create whatever this is that you're going to do, what kind of project you're going to do with your client. Ideally, you would create this plan with a teacher or trainer that integrated one of these products. You then create something that is shown to the students or participants as part of their instruction. They could use it as a way of displaying the knowledge on a topic, but this is going to vary depending on what you're doing and what the client's needs are. So I think the most helpful thing is to show you just a couple of examples. And again, I want to say these are examples. These are not things that are set in stone. This is an individual project for each of you. So each of you are going to have to come up with your own ideas here. But these are some examples of things that could happen. So first, this is what I call the learners create the games. In this scenario, you would create a set of instructions like a job aid for the learners to allow them to create a game from a template, a website, etc. The goal would be that the participants could use this game to show the knowledge that they gained during a lesson. The project would contain the instructions for the participants in print form, like a Word document or something like that. You're going to give them the job aid to do, and then you develop a rubric for the project that the teacher or the trainer could use to grade the games that the students or participants are going to create. You then go to the location with them on the day of that, when they are creating it, and if possible, facilitate them through the development process with the participants or the students. Lastly, you'll create a demonstration of the game similar to the one that you want to create that you want them to do that meets all of your rubric criteria so that you would be able to show an example. After that's complete, you compose a couple of paragraphs reflection on what you did and how it worked, etc. So if you submitted something like that to me, then what I'm going to do is send back a list of deliverables, which would say something like you need to create, number one, a list of detailed instructions, a job aid that's grade or level or age appropriate. You'll need to create a rubric for the teacher or trainer to grade the projects with. You'll need to create an example game, and then you'd create like a reflection of the project, how it went, what you did, etc. So that's an example of a project that you could do. I call that the learners create the games. That's where you allow the participants to create a game that shows their knowledge of some topic that they've learned. Now, another example, which is very typical, is where you create a game. And this is more of where you're creating an educational tool or a learning object that is a game that can be embedded into an actual lesson that a teacher or trainer would be creating. So in this example, you create a game that participants could use to review or learn about a topic or a subject. Using a specific topic, you could create a game that participants would play as a part of a lesson or a training. You and your what I call partnership teacher or trainer who you're partnered with could then, and that could be you, again, if you have access to participants or students that you can work with on a normal basis, you could then teach this lesson. So if you presented something like that to me, obviously it would have specific content and who your partnership teacher is and what you're going to do, all that kind of stuff. What I would look for is deliverables that look something like this. A detailed plan using Gagne's 9 events of instruction that included a game created by you. Then you would design an evaluation of the game that would be implemented after the usage. It could be a pre and post with some qualitative type questions that you would ask from the students. After that, with some student reflections type of things. Or then you would do a reflection on the implementation and success of the lesson. So that's a second example, very typical of how people would approach this, because they would think of very just straightforward as creating a learning object for a individual class or training that has to go on, and then making sure the game is implemented inside of there. And lastly, a third example, because those two are like some of the major ones, but a third example, again, just to show a little bit of variability here, because there's lots of different things you can do for this. It's individual, it's unique to you and your situation, because I want it to be something that applies, if possible, to your job already, because that makes it even more valuable to you. You can see relevancy, all that kind of stuff. If possible, I want it to be something you can do in your specific job, but if not, then we work from there. But again, just to show a little bit, here's a third and final example. You could create teacher resources, or what I call the training resources, or a learning object bank. If you find that they really are in need of lots of resources, you could do this. You create several different games based on the specific topics that they need, that they would integrate into upcoming lessons. And this is different from the first example, that I just did a second ago, in that you're only creating the games and not the lessons here, and you're not assisting with the teaching of the lessons. But here you're going to, deliverables would be all the resources you create. The number would depend upon the client, the topic, and the feasibility, all that stuff. We would work that out. Then you're going to design the evaluation of the games and implement the evaluation, and then you're going to reflect on how it went. So in that one, you are really just the designer, and you then pass it off to a trainer to work with from there, and you evaluate how things went, and you could talk about what you would do differently, etc. So those are a couple of examples. Again, it's really unique. The reason, again, I ask you to start now is because I need you to go out and find who you're going to work with. Start talking with people, find those things out, develop some contacts, begin to process that. We need to do it now so that we don't run out of time, and so that you have this in place as we go forward. That's it for this first e-lesson. If you have any questions, just email me, and hope you have a great week.